Okay, I'm going to call the special council meeting back to order. And I would like to add to number one, to the resolution, the appointment to the Games Operating Trust Board. So may I have a motion on the agenda with that change? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, so then we have the consent resolutions of the shareholders. And my suggestion is that we do this, we do the resolutions, and then we'll come back to number two, and then number 6, which is the GOT board appointment. So, the resolution number 1 is on the financial statements, number 3 is on the auditors, 4 is on the annual report, and then 5 is on the annual reference date. May I have a motion on those?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on any of that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So in terms of the directors proposed, who's got a list of that? Someone help me.
They're not in here anywhere.
Hang on.
Just closed.
Yeah, they were closed.
Do you have the list?
Just hang on a sec. I've got the list. Just bear with me a minute.
Closed DP, page 10.
Okay, so the list would be Rick Hansen, Axel Hovbrender, Helmut Pastras, Gina Fernandez, and Judith Hudson. Someone want to move it?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and, yeah, that's fine. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those, oops, just a minute.
She went to make a phone call.
Okay, well, no, that Councilor Lewis, but anyway, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And number 6, which is the appointment to the Games Operating Trust Board
So moved.
with a name,
Glenn Kishy. Oh, sorry.
Glenn Kishy. Okay, so that's moved and it's seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have I think, anything else for the oval? Then we have the unanimous resolutions for Lulu Island Energy Company. We appointed you to the board. Someone want to move it?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And I think that's,
Adjournment.
so now we're adjourned. With that, I will call the Open General Purposes Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. And then the FCM feasibility study on financing options for,
Move the recommendation.
gentlemen, anything you want to add to your report?
Mr. Chair, staff have nothing further to add.
Okay. Who's Counselor 5? 5. Counselor Day.
Hi, my name's Counselor 5. Okay, so it's a feasibility study. But as I read the report, on page GP10, it says the cost to upgrade heat pumps is between $12,000 and $30,000, and the savings is between $3,000 and $7,200 over the life of the heat pump. And the same thing with hot water heaters. It's the cost to put it in is $6,000 to $15,000, and the money you're going to recover is $650 to $1,800 over the life of the machine. So, I mean, we all want to do things for the environment, but what I'm concerned with is it even feasible until the prices come down?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I will refer in detail to some of the business case pieces for that, but the business case is still straightforward over the life cycle of that equipment. If you're looking at a 15-year life cycle, those costs will be recouped over that period of time, because that's the kind of typical lifespan of the appliance. What is could be a challenge for a given homeowner might be the upfront cost. and actually financing that. And part of this proposal in front of you to proceed with this FCM study is to actually look at those options to make that easier.
So the study is going to cost $220,000. Will we be covered with all that through the grants?
$220,000 is the estimated cost of the study to do what we need to do, given the scope of work that's provided by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. But we're expecting $175,000 back from FCM on that. So the net cost to the city is relatively small.
It's still around 50 grand though, that out of pocket from the city, right?
That is correct, Councillor Day.
Yeah, I want to do this. I just think that the numbers don't really add up, so.
If I may, one of the options for us was to look at using the local government climate action program LGCAP funding, and that's specifically for this kind of initiative that's reducing community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, and also addressing some equity issues in the community at the same time with respect to homeowners that may be income strapped and would like to proceed on measures such as introducing cooling in their home for climate, reduce overheating in the summer and lower energy costs per month. So directly, we're trying to benefit the community and specifically also those that are the least able to kind of move forward on this right now.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Also known as Councillor number 2. Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll support it going forward because, it's voluntary, it's retrofitting. Councillor 2's been cut off. It's an incentive for people to, be more green, and I think we all do support that. But the question I have is with some of the numbers and expenses, it's still relatively new technology, and quite frankly, we've all either read or heard about, some horror stories with the technology in terms of its durability and its reliability. And so what studies or evidence is out there? Because it's relatively new. So how assured are you on some of the numbers you're quoting?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I'll refer that question to my Senior Climate Action Specialist, Gabriel, to answer that more fully.
Yeah, the chair, Councillor Hobbs. The technology is pretty involved. It's been tested in different environments, really low temperatures. So the assumptions we took is based on different studies done across Canada and the United States. We did what-if scenarios with the worst-case scenario and best scenarios that take into consideration different efficiencies and carbon taxes. And I also would like to highlight that this study is not only looking at heat pumps, but also at building envelope, ventilation, EV charging, and solar PVs as well. So it's not only heat pumps. Of course, heat pumps are a big piece of it, but not only at heat pumps.
Yeah, I think whenever there is an evaluation or something is done, for me, I'd appreciate having kind of a cheat sheet or, a fact sheet that just compares things quite directly from, obviously from accredited sources and maybe multiple sources and that kind of thing, so you can get averages and do comparisons. Because there are a lot of conversations floating around in the media and different sources, and they do not all agree on it, and that's no big surprise. So, yeah, but I'll be supporting this today, so thank you for the report.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thanks, gents. Then we go to the YVR Airport Zoning Regulations. Okay. John, anything you want to talk about?
Nothing further to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I've got Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good report, John. On our page 20, and I want to ask a question, and I asked this question, I asked it 30 years ago, with regard to potential building heights in Richmond. Have we ever been provided metrics from YVR or Transport Canada on where actually planes fly and take off, what their angle of attack is and when they get up there? Because if I go stand out there, I see the plane up like this already, and yet everything from here to East Richmond is under the flight path and we can't build. And that kind of information on their runways. Have we ever been provided anything? We keep saying, well, and what you've said on page GP 20 is great, okay? I'm not criticizing in any way. But I've never heard anything from Air Canada other than, no, we can't build there, it's under the flight path, we can't build. And there isn't a plane within 1,000 meters or 5,000 meters because they've taken off that way. And so I guess to embellish our position, I guess is what I can, Your Worship, and especially with what we're getting from Victoria now.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I think what I can say is that there has been work through NAV Canada to basically refine a bit further the flight paths as they leave and approach YVR. However, this package here deals with the airport zoning regs, which is a much broader area and certainly could be a part of the negotiations with respect to looking at increased building height.
Yeah, I'm wondering, given the new planes and what's coming into YVR and the expansion of YVR, which is still growing, which is great, whether we can, the staff could take that under advisement as opposed to form a resolution, Your Worship, to try to find that kind of information and have those discussions with the board of directors of YVR.
Sure, I think you can take that under advisement. The one thing I will note, though, because I think you raise a good point, what you see on page GP 20 came out of a discussion where the CEO of the airport was talking about redefining where the flight paths are, which is your point. And because of different building heights and the need in Vancouver and Surrey and some of the other cities, or the desire to construct higher buildings, they were doing some work on that, to which I said, well, and that's what led me to talk to staff about the fact that let's have them look at Richmond as well, because we've got some unique challenges, but you know, we've got the red zones and whatever, they extend really everywhere except Steveston or something, but you know, really we could be far more permissive than that, I think.
It seems to be more restrictive than any other community, and I think this would warrant some positive discussions in the future. Thank you.
Yep, there you go. Counselor 5 is Counselor Day.
Perfect, thank you. I was just curious, the deadline is June 19th, which is like 16 days from now, and yet staff met with YVR 2021, 2022. Why is this coming to us so late in the game?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, a lot of it was staff-to-staff conversations. That was really kind of understanding what the proposed revisions would look like. There were several attempts to meet further with Transport Canada, which then eventually they asked YVR staff to basically figure out how to implement these new provisions. There's been several meetings with YVR staff, and really what came to the point of bringing this forward to council is there hasn't been an update in a couple of years. There was an opportunity to provide consultation and so it's a combined providing an update to council and an opportunity to consult and provide information to Transport Canada to express our concerns. So the concerns have always been there. We had hoped that there might have been more of a positive outcome. There hasn't yet. It's now time to take action.
Optimism with YVR, that seems like an oxymoron. My next question is, we're not the only ones affected by this, so will this be sent out to other cities?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, the other cities are impacted, including Vancouver and Burnaby. There's separate dialogue going on with those municipalities.
Okay, and we don't have a local newspaper anymore, unfortunately. So can we advertise in the Sun or Province? Because just advertising on Canada Gazette, which you guys didn't find out about until April 20th, seems totally inadequate. So what do you think?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, agreed, it is inadequate. We found out through YVR staff that it was being posted on the Gazette. That's why we felt we needed to take action right away. As far as posting in other newspapers, I don't believe Transport Canada was required to do that with respect to the Sun. I'm not too sure, but we don't have a local newspaper, so that was difficult for us to find out.
So can we advertise? Do we have to depend on them to advertise?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I mean, certainly council can direct staff to look at opportunities to advertise, to get notices out to residents. I think at this point, this is really more I guess, local government to provide input. If we feel there's a need to alert residents or stakeholders, we can certainly take direction to do so.
Okay, I'll wait to see what everybody else says. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I'm just going to touch on the last issue that was brought up regarding the building heights. And I go back to GP 20 and we look at the fact that there was a discussion in 2014 with 45 meters. So just so we have a sense, for example, 50 meters is about 50 meters is about 15 floors,
Correct.
correct?
Approximately.
So we are now capped at 45.
Mm-hmm.
And anything we want to go above 15 stories, YVR would have to approve in all areas of Richmond or just on their proposed future flight paths?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Heed, just in the airport zoning regulations, which I believe is in attachment 1, which
Yes.
would indicate all those areas that are in sort of the teal and yellow color would be 45 meters or less. Areas outside of that, which is parts of West Richmond, Steveston, and certainly ALR land to the east, there would be no restrictions.
So it'd be interesting to see when we're talking about Bill 47, the 800 meters from a Canada Line station, whether in fact we can go above that. So, you know, I'm looking at YVR has not been a great communicator on what they want to do. We all know that. That's no surprise to anyone. So, I credit you for doing a report which doesn't rubber stamp what they want, and that you'll be involved in discussions on that. If we go back to the wildlife part of it, and I was looking at that where they start to look at wildlife hazard provisions. And I do have a little bit of concern there, given the fact that we are trying to protect ecological areas. We're trying to have a tree canopy. We've got the park that's coming near the water on River Road. We've got all of that, which, whether it's a migratory bird or whatever, it's going to be in that area. So now, are they telling us we cannot do that? I'm looking at your material on 17 and 19 with respect to that. Are they saying we can't do what we should be doing as a responsible municipality on that issue?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, certainly that was the initial alarm that went off. I think through discussions, it's more about mitigating those impacts and working with YVR staff who certainly have a better understanding of the local context, are able to probably work with the municipality to figure out, what are the appropriate guidelines, what type of landscaping would be required that may not attract larger birds, which is, I guess, more of a threat than smaller birds, for example. These guidelines from Transport Canada came from Ottawa and are meant to be applied to different airports across the nation. Therefore, do not take into the context where the Vancouver Airport is amongst a migratory flyway.
I think that's part of the problem. And look at the snow geese that frequent Richmond just off of River Road, Terra Nova area. Thousands and thousands over the winter years. So I think you've got a good approach here, and looking forward to whether you're able to get some movement on this and some answers from NAV or Transport Canada. Thank you.
Maybe I could ask you, just before I go to Councillor Wolf, maybe I could ask you in the next week, could we have a memo just outlining more about what the airport zoning regulations are and giving us a diagram that is a little easier to comprehend than that attachment one?
Okay.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Yeah, this item definitely raised a few things. Looking in the map, that attachment 1 on page 21, within the area, the teal color, is the Richmond Nature Park, is the Garden City lands, is all the east agricultural land. That's completely disastrous to the ecosystem strategy that we're trying to improve in the city and maintain at the bare minimum. Hearing in the news on the way here that Canadian Airlines are going to take in a record $8 trillion this year. I wonder how many How many planes have been taken down at YVR by birds? Do we have any numbers on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I wouldn't have those numbers at the moment.
Yeah, I read the Canadian Gazette posting that came out April 20th, and in there was a quote, I quote, we require updates to the wildlife hazard clause. But in your report, I didn't see anything mentioning what that clause is, who's in charge of that clause?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there is promises through the Gazette that there would be more information and how to interpret that, but that information hasn't been released yet.
Thank you. 3 more follow-up questions. You mentioned in the report that there's no legal requirement for Transport Canada to notify us. Is there a way we can ask for there to be notification in the future?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we could. However, I'm not aware of any future notifications that they're required to do.
Then next one is, from your opinion, could coordination occur with Abbotsford International Airport, Langley and Pitt Meadows regional airports and other international airports to move some flights out of YVR and to these other locations?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, those conversations could occur. I think it would be a monumental effort.
Worth doing. My last one then, I guess, is what if we requested that they move all of their flights from YVR west over the water, and so they don't have to impact anything to the east?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, one thing I can maybe add to that is part of this AZR update was to allow an option for a third runway in the future, although this isn't part of the approval process. And one option was to look at a runway out in the foreshore. That might alleviate some of the issues, but you'd still have the north runway, of course, that would have impacts to the city.
Yeah, no, I meant all flights, so including the north runway.
Right.
And I'll also just tack on, Councillor Heed mentioned the snow geese, they're also commonly hanging out on Sea Island by Iona. And Iona Regional Park is a bird watcher's paradise because it's a great place for the migratory birds to stop. And there's also this major project known as the Iona Wastewater Treatment Facility that is going to create a lot more habitat in that region to attract birds. So hopefully they're up to speed with what YVR is trying to do. Thanks.
Oops. Okay, so with that, can we have a motion? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thanks, John. Councillor Glanders, did you want to introduce your motion?
Sure, thank you. I have two items. The first is that staff research and advise options for obtaining the federal grant money available for costs associated with housing refugees and asylum seekers. So can I just do one at a time?
No, my suggestion, read them all.
Okay. Okay. And 2, that staff review the policies of Salvation Army House to analyze how we can make shelter more available to Richmond residents, such as by looking at access to the emergency rooms, length of stay, and wait times.
All right, so you're moving that?
Thank you.
So it's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just speaking on the first item. As we remember, I believe it was Councillor Day made a motion a few months ago that we write a letter to the federal government asking for support because we found out that anywhere between 30 and 60% of the people staying in our shelter are people seeking asylum or refugees, and we were looking for some support for that. There was a roundtable a couple of weeks ago where some MPs, there are 2 MPs, mentioned that there might be some funding available, and I don't know if staff needs some of direction from council on what we might need to do to be creative to qualify for this funding. So I was hoping that staff could update us on what they've learned so far and what options there are for that funding.
All right, so this is being referred to staff, so they'll do that research. They'll report back to us.
Okay, so that's just going to be done based on my motion, and they don't need to come speak to it. We don't need to discuss it.
Not at this
Yeah,
moment.
okay. So is that?
And then the second part?
Okay, so the second part, so, part of the two are tied together, because even if we get funding, for example, to house, like, let's just say, for example, we banked off some hotel rooms and decided to have the asylum seekers go into hotel rooms, and we got reimbursed from the federal government for that, thereby creating room in our shelter. We're still having issues on who can access the shelter and how. So the shelter isn't capturing all of the residents that need it. There are some policies that aren't, that don't seem to be lining up with what perhaps is in the contract. So I would like staff to review the contract and find out what's actually going on there. Because there are some rooms that are not included in, when someone calls anywhere in the Lower Mainland to get shelter, they call the 211, and people from outside of Richmond could access our shelter, for example, but there are 3 rooms that are supposed to be available for people that don't fit into the other rooms, transgender couples, and so they're sort of flex rooms, and those haven't been available, is what I've heard. And I would like that to be reviewed because they need to be available. And the other issue is that if you stay in the shelter, it's a maximum 30-day stay, and then you have to leave, and then you can't go back again for 90 days. But the shelter downtown that's also run by the Salvation Army, the Balkan House, it's a 60-day. So we've got a 90-day period there where people are waiting and they're unhoused. And I think that might be too long. And the other issue is just that some people don't fit into our shelter. They might break a rule, or their complex needs are just too much for this shelter to handle, and so they're not allowed to stay there at all. And it really causes a problem, because I just met somebody who was working with an outreach worker. They're a very gentle person. They're no harm to anybody. They're not an addict, and they have mental health issues. And the outreach worker was working on getting them into a facility. So he needed to know that she was at the Salvation Army house, and so that he had an appointment for her for the Monday, and he went there, and she had been thrown out because she didn't follow a rule. Somebody offered her a beer in a garden, or just something small, and and then they can't find her, right? So now we got somebody on the street who's afraid. They ended up getting beaten up, and it's just a woman, she's at risk, and then the outreach worker has to try to find them and start from square one. So there's really some gaps there, and I believe that there might be a referral out on where we could find land for a lower barrier shelter in Richmond. So if staff could come back with what they've discovered on that, or what advances have been made in that regard.
All right, well, other referrals will come back in due course. Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's very important we look at the efficacy of all of our shelters that we have here in Richmond, and whether it's a low barrier or some type of other barrier housing, being compassionate and not turning people away is very, very important for us. Yes, we want Richmond first, and I'm not referring to the political party, but people that have issue here in Richmond to be housed in that. We've been hearing about, and I know Councillor Day has also been working on this with Councillor Calanders, on some concerns with how the Salvation Army actually run that particular facility at this time. And I think it's certainly favorable that we have staff look at this in a comprehensive manner in order that we get this right. And in talking to the Member of Parliament that said, we've got money available. We just don't know what process to put it through. And I think that's part of the difficulty of what we're facing here in Richmond. We don't have the structure to take that money for that. Even if we created that structure, whether it's going to be where we put asylum seekers at Salvation Army, or whether we look at another facility, such as you alluded to, the referral that we already have in place. So I think it's incumbent upon us to, again, Celian's a very, very large entity. They're building the new Harbor Lights, which is, I think, is about a $60 million project. And, they're very involved in trying to deal with some people that are in crisis or from a impoverished point in their particular life and trying to get them out of it. But you actually mentioned something very important. There's no continuum of care. So if someone's there temporarily, whether it's 60 or 90 days in Belkin House or Harbor Lights or 90 days here, is linking them with the other resources to get them out so we can, again, bring someone else into that continuum of care. So I think we've gone great strides here in Richmond with what the work our staff has done on trying to deal with the unsheltered population we have in Richmond. And I think this is just a continuation of the work that staff is actually doing in trying to address this. So I'm hoping that, we can get this, and I do be accused of moving things along too quickly or expecting it too quickly. I'm just hoping that we can get something back in a very timely fashion in order for us to do that, because the federal government does have money there for us.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I actually spoke to our two MPs about the financing, and it's called the Government of Canada Interim Housing Assistance Program. It came out on August 20th of 2020, and I believe that if we fill out the right paperwork, we can be reimbursed for those asylum seekers and refugees. So that shouldn't be hard to do. Let's get going on that. Number two is a little tougher because we don't have a lot of shelter space, and the Salvation Army is really good at getting people on, and they have the continuum of care. But the beds are filled up with asylum seekers and refugees. Meanwhile, Richmondites that have lived in most of their lives here can't get in. And we desperately need a new low barrier shelter for the ones that, we might not be able to save. But let's make sure that the ones that we can save can go into Salvation Army, get all of the services that they provide, and then move on to a better life. So I think that is the key. But what I'd like staff to do is send us a copy of the contract with Salvation Army and also their best practices. Because I think if we better understood how they operate, we could probably assist them more and potentially get those Richmondites in there and get them the beds that they need. And, from my perspective, the more we do, the better. I know that, we're downloading from higher levels of government, but let's fight for those dollars. Just recently, when we dealt with the rallies and whatnot, the Vancouver Coast Health Authority said they are looking at providing extra services in Richmond. So let's keep the pressure on, because we need detox, we need low barrier housing, and we need it yesterday. So I'll be supporting this motion.
All right, Councillor Gillanders, to wrap up.
To wrap up, I agree with the comments that other councillors have made, and I just want to point out the continuum of care piece again. So I want to stress the issue about the 30-day maximum stay. The 30 days just isn't long enough to be connected to all the services and to get into the next phase of housing or whatever that person needs. Like, the outreach worker will be working with them while they're staying there and getting things lined up. And then when they have to get booted out after 30 days before they've got their next thing, that's what causes this endless cycle of it. Then they're on the street again, and then, you can't find them. So I really want that to be looked at, because apparently the people seeking asylum and refugees can stay for 3 or 4 months. But somebody who called the 211 to get shelter can only stay for the 30 days. So that's really causing a big problem. And just a low barrier shelter would also save people. It's just that you're meeting people at a different level where they're at, so it just takes longer. So it's just, I do support having the two different models. But yeah, we just need to get moving on it, so thanks.
So we'll call the question together. 1 and 2, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Someone move adjournment? Okay, we're now adjourned. And we'll go to the Open Finance Committee. You can just bear with me. Okay, we'll call the Open Finance meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Annual report,
Move the recommendation.
moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, go ahead.
Turns on. Thank you so much. This is a great report. It's really impressive, and I find there's just so much information in here. Is it possible for the public to get a printed copy?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, printed copy is available at the front of house for inspection. It is will be posted online tomorrow for the public inspection period before it's adopted by council.
Again, I'd like to have staff send a copy of this to the Chamber of Commerce. I think they would also find this extremely useful. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions on it. It does have a ton of information, and it is very interesting for sure. Just with the demographics and the age groups on page 63, when it talks about 0 to 14 years of age, I just wondered, we always hear about the aging population, and we know that's increasing in Richmond. We were just talking about it earlier today. But with the 0 to 14, the school population has started to increase a little bit. So is the 0 to 14 staying fairly stable, or what's happening with it? Do we know, or do you know off the top of your head what's happening with it as a percentage of our demographics?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I do not have that information available.
Okay, that's fine. And just with the housing starts, and it's mentioned on a couple pages, but on page 66, you know, there's a little bit of a dip in the quarter. And I think there's a couple other numbers further on in the report in terms of permits and that kind of thing and construction value. Is that any indication of an overall situation with the economy or the construction industry, or do we know, or is it just, you know, a bubble or after effect pending COVID, and we'll have to see how that shakes out? Because again, you hear different things in the industry about how projects are going nowadays.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, there have been a few quarters where the indicators have been decreasing. We'll actually see in later reports, you have some contrary information between building permits and CMHC, so they're going alternative ways. The interesting thing is with our interest rates, the availability of labor and things of that sort, there are challenges, but then we also have the impact of the bills that have come out from the province, so it's a little bit hard to gauge or predict what will be happening in the future.
Right. Yeah, and we've been doing so well in the past few years. And the last question is just regarding the ALR. You know, it mentions how many acres are under cultivation for cranberries, and it talks about the 39% of Richmond being agricultural land. I'm just curious, do we track at all the percentage of agricultural land that is agricultural yet not being farmed? Do we have any concept of that percentage? Because there is a significant chunk, I think.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, we do not have that information available.
Okay. That'd be interesting, because some of it, I understand, is hard for farmers to get a hold of the owner, even to lease the land. And there are chunks of 20, 40 acres here and there that are owned by people who are, I guess, holding it. And so that would be an interesting thing for us to get a handle of in terms of food security. So just a piece of advice, perhaps.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I can just get you to refer to FIN 68, the Richmond business license, and the mayor will probably tell me to bring this up, which I probably will in a different committee setting, but I just wanted to look at that. Based on what probably some misinformation is, our business licenses for 2023 were actually not too bad when you look at pre-COVID. And, you know, we've got 14,245, which I think is good, because if you look at some of the media reports, you would think that we'd have businesses closing and leaving Richmond left, right, and center. So, but my question is regarding those business license, and I realize that there's so many different categories of it. For example, in the category where we're looking at food services such as restaurants or something like that, do we have anything in our bylaw that indicates that they cannot be cash only, that they also have to have some other option there for someone to pay? And the reason why I bring this forward is there's complaints that are coming to me when they go in out for dinner or whatever, and most people don't carry cash, including myself anymore. They want to pay with a debit card or a cash card. Do we have anything in our bylaw here which indicates that you can't do a cash only and not accept anything else? And again, Mayor, I may have to bring this up at a different setting, but that was a question I had when reviewing this.
Do we have any idea?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I do not know that answer, but staff could get back to you on that.
Great,
though.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we've called the question on that. We'll go to active capital project financial update for the first quarter. Anything to add to your report?
To the chair, staff has nothing further to add.
So it's moved and seconded. Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you. So great report again. Just over at Minoru Center for Active Living for the beginning of Senior Days and, for another event where I was at the Oval for Senior Days and then went over there. The parking is atrocious. Are there any plans in our capital projects to creating like a parkade of any kind over by the Senior Center and MCAL?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, not at this time. We don't have any plans to add any parkade.
Yeah. You know, we were at a seniors event at Faces of Richmond, and a lot of those people, they can't walk very far. And I know that there's some space with the fire hall. Maybe there's a way to combine, you know.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, actually, when we did plan the parking for Minoru Center, if you look at the fire hall fence, it has jogged in, and we've took about 15 stalls from Fire Hall 1, and we have designated parking for the seniors all in front of Minoru for certain times, but that is the maximum that we can do. The park is busy.
Okay. Yeah, you're not kidding. Thank you.
All right, let's see, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Just two question areas. One is around the Richmond Nature Park building program. It has it it's on page 114 that the current year-to-date actual is 942,000 of a total $4.8 million budget. I'd just like to question where are we at for staying on budget for that? I know with the operation to do the septic work in the rainy season, it led to some excavator getting stuck and probably a lot of extra pumping of water out to be able to dig the hole. So do we have any comments on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we are on target and we are on budget at this stage. The expenditures now, we are ending the project by the end of this year. So the money has already been spent to date, but we are on target, on schedule, on budget.
Okay, great, thanks. My second one is in regards to the playground replacement, and specifically on page 123, it mentions the Dolphin Neighborhood Park. And at Parks and Rec Cultural Services Committee meeting last week, at the end of the meeting, we discussed briefly some of the complaints around lots of gratitude for that enhancement work, but there was also some complaints. So I'm just wondering, did we happen to be under budget on that and maybe have remaining money we can replace the backboard and hoop?
Your worship to Councillor Wolf, the Dolphin Basketball Playground update is recorded on this report. The basketball court that you've mentioned is not part of this report. It's part of our recurring park aging infrastructure update program. The budget has been approved by council through the years to allow for parks to conduct various number of conditional assessment for all sorts of park assets, including ball courts as well as other park assets. So staff can look for ways to improve. At the same time, according to my previous response to the member of the public, this court is safe, it's not subsurface, substandard, and it's technically sound. So sometimes members of the community would provide comments based on discretion and play and taste, etc. So staff would continue to monitor and see whether further improvement is needed.
Great, terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Just on page 19, just one question. It's about the canal stabilization project, and you're talking about Sidaway Road between Blundell and Westminster Highway. So my question is that an ongoing project that will involve other roads, especially in ALR, like 8 Road, 7 Road, Canby Road? Because when you go down there, I know there's been some work done, but every time a lot of water runs through there, the erosion in those big, huge ditches that they use to flood cranberry fields, some of the erosion is quite substantial. So the question is, what's the ongoing project and work and timeline for those areas?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. So yes, usually through the capital program, we do have canal stabilization coming up. So in previous capital projects, we have had that and we'll continue to provide that.
Okay, and the project on Sidaway Road, is that kind of the scope of what you'd expect to get done in a year, or would there be more than that done in a particular year?
That's a fairly typical scope.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a quick question on page 123. Wanted to follow up on the Dolphin Park, if I may. We're going to spend $1.6 million in that category. Are we ever going to resurface Dolphin Park? Obviously, I'm thinking from the historical point of view. The bank boards have to be, obviously, should be upgraded, but are we ever going to totally asphalt it, or are we going to put in the other side, what we do at South Arm?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the basketball court has been resurfaced with the sports acrylic surface similar to South Arm.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a pity. Have we have any feedback on that?
The service is great.
Okay, be interesting when the Dolphin Classic gets back into going to see whether what was yesteryear was better than what is coming now. I'm not criticizing, but it'll be interesting to see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Financial information for the first quarter. Cindy, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Development cost charges. Venus, inflationary increases, I understand. Someone want to move it?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Okay, just a minute. Councilor McNulty?
Yeah, just a quick comment to staff on a great report. Thank you very much. No problem with what we're doing. I think we have to do a better job of talking about the DCCs, of what they actually entail and why we charge DCCs. And not only that, I think some of the developers fall short, and also some of the public, for what we're actually paying. And we know the DCCs and development only cover, correct me if I'm wrong, about 40% of any upgrades around a development. And I think we need to let people know where we are, because the other 60 is borne generally by the taxpayer. And generally speaking, am I correct or wrong on that?
To the chair, to Councilor Minotti, you're correct that not all costs are borne by the developers. It depends on the burden it's to growth. So it will be partially paid by taxpayers, and also depending on the benefiting factor, it will also be paid by growth.
And I think people have to know, if we're putting a subdivision in, following up on that, Your Worship, we're putting a subdivision or we're building 30 townhomes or whatever, the infrastructures all have to be upgraded accordingly. And I think we should be listing those. We're going to check water, sewer, sidewalks, whatever it is. And I think we should maybe just have a little checklist to get out there from a public relations point of view, because it just didn't happen. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Day.
Thank you very much. On page 153, the DCC charge for a single-family home is $64,000. What happens if Bill 44 comes forward and there's 4 homes or 6 homes? I mean, that's 4 homes, 6 homes. Would we charge that $64,000 times 4 or times 6?
Through the chair to Councilor Day, At the current bylaw, each new additional dwelling unit on the site will be subject to the $64,000. But at the same time, due to the legislation changes, we are going to revisit the unit of measurement. So this is something that will be in our work plan to assess whether the per lot sort of chargeable rate is still, whether it's still going to be the plan going forward. So it may be subject to change after our review.
So as you do that do that work with planning, would you then update us in a memo?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Liu. There you go.
No, she's opposed.
Oh, you're opposed?
I'm
Oh, I thought you wanted to make a comment. So that's carried with Councillor Liu opposed. Now, Richmond Olympic Oval, first quarter financial. Let's see, Jerry and Rick are here. Anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay, someone want to move it? Moved and seconded. It's just received for information. Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. On page FIN 162, it states that under revenues that the contribution from the city of Richmond was just over $1 million. But I could swear that it was $3 million at some point. Could you just clarify that?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the budget for 2024 is $4 million, and the amount increases by CPI each year from.
So why does it say 1 million? Maybe I'm reading this wrong. But... Oh, the quarter. I'm sorry. Dumb question. I apologize.
Okay. All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Little Island Energy Company. So moved and seconded. Alan, anything to add to your report?
Mr. Chair, nothing to add to the report.
Okay. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Again, really interesting report. Hopefully I get this one right. So on page FIN 160, it says that the salaries and benefits were actually down 5%, but the maintenance was up by 134,000.
160?
160.
That's the oval.
166. Sorry, I apologize. Okay. So I was just wondering, like, how did you manage to do so much more in maintenance when your actually salary costs were down?
Excuse me, through the chair to Councillor Dare, do you mind to repeat the questions? I was kind of confused with number
Yes,
of pages.
my fault. Okay, page 166, the salaries and benefits are down 5%. But then it states on 165 that the maintenance was actually up by $134,000. So I'm just wondering how we managed that.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, this 5% lower than prior year, it's comparison to last year, when during the end of the year, we had extra additional work done through the consultants and city staff in support. So it's not that overall amount of work went down.
So you just contracted it out, basically?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Well, good work. I mean, things are looking good over there. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone want to move adjournment? Okay, we're now adjourned, and we'll go back to the closed GP meeting. So we'll let the room adjust.